The fog was still thick on Route 9 at 7 in the morning. It clung to the low fields on both sides of the road, blurring the fence posts and the tree line into soft gray shapes, muffling the sound of the occasional passing truck. Nora Ashby stood beside her Audi on the shoulder, one hand pressed flat against the roof, a takeaway coffee cup balanced on the hood in front of her, still sending up a thin curl of steam. Her blazer was charcoal gray, her heels were 2 inches, and her phone showed 6% battery. The left rear tire was flat. The meeting she could not be late to started at 8:30. The office was 6 miles away. 2 miles back, Caleb Merritt had just pulled out of the drop-off lane at Ashford Elementary. He watched Lily disappear through the double doors without looking back. She never looked back. His kid, always moving forward, and he sat there a moment longer than he needed to. On the dashboard, tucked under the corner of his inspection sticker, was a folded piece of paper in Derek's handwriting. Tonight, Rosario's, 7 o'clock. Don't cancel. He had read it 4 times since yesterday. He looked at it once more, exhaled slowly through his nose, and pulled the truck back onto the road. He did not want to go. He had already decided he would go. That was the particular misery of agreeing to something before you were ready. He saw the hazard lights blinking through the fog before he saw the car. The amber pulse was rhythmic and patient, like something waiting. He slowed without thinking, pulled up behind the Audi, and cut his engine. He stopped because that was what he did. It was not a calculation. It was closer to muscle memory. The same reflex that made him check a noise before assuming it was nothing. The same instinct that made him look under the hood before writing something off. He got out of the truck. Nora heard the door and turned around. She had been staring at her phone, running the math on her battery versus the time it would take to type in the unlock code for her roadside app. She turned around and saw a man in a gray work shirt walking toward her from a pickup truck that had seen better decades. His hands, she noticed immediately, were already oil-stained. Not from this morning, from whatever work the day before had left behind. "I already called roadside assistance," she said. The words came out before she had decided to say them. They were not exactly true. She had opened the app. She had not gotten past the login screen. He stopped a few feet from the tire, crouched down, and looked at it without looking at her. "Okay," he said, "I'm just taking a look." He kept looking. Nora checked her watch. 7:04. She had 86 minutes. The problem with Caleb Merritt was that he did not fill silences. Most men, in Nora's experience, would have said something by now, would have offered commentary, asked a follow-up question, explained what he was doing and why. He just looked at the tire with the focused, unhurried attention of someone who already knew what he was going to find and simply wanted to confirm it before he said anything. He ran his thumb along the sidewall, found the nail a roofing nail, head still intact, and stood back up. "Spare in the trunk?" he said. "I think so. You want me to check?" She wanted to say no. She wanted to manage this herself, the way she managed everything herself, cleanly, and without owing anyone anything. But her phone was at 6%. The app was locked. The fog was not lifting, and the math was not working in her favor. "Yes," she said. "Thank you." He went around to the trunk. She watched him, not because she meant to, but because there was nowhere else useful to look. He found the spare, found the jack, found the lug wrench in the side compartment without asking where it was. He set everything out on the ground with a methodical efficiency that was almost irritating in how unperformed it was. He was not showing off. He was simply doing a thing he knew how to do. Her bag slipped off the hood. The contents did not scatter entirely. Her wallet stayed. Her keys stayed, but several papers fanned out across the pavement. He picked them up in one motion and handed them back without looking at them. She tucked them into the bag quickly. On top was the printed reservation confirmation from Rosario's. The restaurant name printed twice, once in the subject line, once in the body. She shoved it to the bottom. He had already turned back to the tire. Neither of them noticed. Nora did not register that he had held the paper. Caleb did not register what was printed on it, but the name Rosario's was there, in black ink on white paper, 6 inches from his right hand, for the span of approximately 1 second. He picked up the lug wrench and went to work. The fog did not lift. The hazard lights kept blinking. Nora stood with her arms crossed against the morning cold, watching the shoulder of the road while a man she had never met changed her tire in the early gray light. And she did not say anything, and neither did he, and somehow that was not uncomfortable in the way she would have expected it to be. He had the flat off in 11 minutes. The spare was a full size, which was a small mercy, and the condition was good. He set the flat aside, centered the spare, and began threading the lug nuts by hand before reaching for the wrench. The fog had dampened the shoulder enough to leave a dark smudge across his knee where he had knelt, and he did not seem to notice or care. Nora checked her phone. 7:17. 5% battery now. She opened her flashlight app, it was the only thing still running, and aimed the beam at the tire without being asked. The light was weak, but it was something. He did not thank her. He just shifted angle slightly to use it better. They had not exchanged names. "You do this a lot?" she said. The question was meant to fill the silence. It came out sounding more genuine than she intended. "Change tires? Stop for strangers." He tightened a lug nut before answering. "Not as often as I probably should." He moved to the next one. "But mornings like this, hard to just keep going." She considered that. It was an honest answer. Not charming, not rehearsed, just honest. "Where are you headed?" she asked. Another gap filler. She was not particularly interested. She was cold and running behind, and her coffee had gone lukewarm on the hood. He paused for half a beat, not long. Just the pause of someone whose mind went somewhere before the words came out. "Got a thing tonight," he said. "A dinner. The kind a friend sets up without asking if you want him to." Something shifted slightly in Nora's chest. A small movement, like a key turning in a lock that had been stuck. "I have one of those tonight too," she said. He looked up from the tire for the first time. Not at her face, at the general direction of her. The fog was still between them, diffuse and soft. "Tonight?" he said. 7 o'clock. He looked back down. Went to the last lug nut. Did not say anything. She did not say anything either. Above them, a car passed on Route 9 doing 50, its headlights sweeping through the fog and disappearing. Neither of them watched it go. The hazard lights kept their slow pulse. Caleb stood, wiped his hands on the back of his jeans, and went over the lug nuts one more time in sequence. "That'll hold," he said. "You'll want to get the full tire patched or replaced before you put too many miles on it." "I know." She reached into her bag and pulled out 2 20s. She held them toward him. He shook his head without looking at the money. "No charge," he said. "You spent 20 minutes on the side of a road." "I was already on the side of a road." She kept the bills out for a moment longer. He had already started walking back toward his truck. She lowered her hand. She watched him go the unhurried walk, the work shirt, the truck that started on the first turn of the key, and she stood there a moment after his taillights had dissolved back into the fog, her coffee growing cold on the hood, one hand resting on the roof of her car. She did not know why she was standing still. She got in the car and pulled back onto Route 9. Both of them were heading toward the same Tuesday. One would open a shop on Morrison Street and fix 3 cars and eat a sandwich at his desk and look at a piece of paper on his dashboard a total of 6 times before deciding, finally, to iron a shirt. The other would walk into a glass and steel office building 17 minutes late, sit in a meeting she could have led in her sleep, and spend the afternoon doing competent work she did not have to think about, which left her brain entirely free to return, without permission, to a man crouched in the fog who had handed her papers without reading them and refused $40 without making a point of it. By 4 o'clock, Nora had checked her calendar twice to confirm the reservation she already had confirmed. By 5, she had changed her earrings once and put the first pair back. By 6:15, she was driving toward Rosario's on Market Street, telling herself this was simply the completion of a prior obligation, nothing more. Caleb left the shop at 6:40, which was later than he meant to. He stopped at home, showered faster than he ever showered, put on the one dress shirt that still fit properly, and looked at himself in the bathroom mirror with an expression that was approximately 40% resignation and 60% the particular stubbornness of a man who had promised and intended to keep the promise. He fed Lily dinner, kissed the top of her head, left her with the neighbor from 2 houses down who watched her on short notice, and drove to Rosario's. He walked in at 7:12. His shirt was slightly creased. His hair was still a little damp. The host led him to a table in the back corner, angled away from the main room, the kind of quiet placement that felt private without being isolated. He followed and was already composing a polite but minimal opening sentence when he looked up and saw who was sitting there. She was in the same blazer. Her hair was still neat. She had a glass of water she had not touched. She raised her eyes from the menu at the exact moment he stopped walking, not a second before, not a second after, and for 3 full seconds, neither of them moved. The host said something. Neither of them heard it. Caleb sat down, not because he had decided to, because his legs did it before the rest of him caught up. Nora opened the menu again. She was not reading it. The candle on the table made a small sound in its glass. Somewhere in the dining room behind them, a woman laughed at something. "I didn't know," he said. "Neither did I," she said. The waiter came and went. They ordered drinks they would both drink slowly. The dinner was supposed to be awkward. It was awkward for the first 15 minutes, in the way that 2 people who have already met in an unguarded context are awkward when they suddenly find themselves in a formal one. They had already talked without an agenda that morning. That made the agenda of tonight feel slightly absurd, and they both felt it. And that shared recognition of the absurdity was the first thing they actually had in common. Caleb sat across from a woman his friend had described in 3 words: smart, serious, but worth it, and found himself thinking all 3 were accurate, and also that none of them were particularly useful for navigating whatever this was. He kept returning, in the back of his mind, to the reason he had not wanted to come. It was not that he did not want company. It was that every time he thought about bringing someone new into his life, he thought about Lily first, about what it meant to let a child start to attach to a person and then have that person not be there anymore. He had watched Lily lose her mother at 4 years old. He was not going to let her lose anyone else through carelessness. Nora, for her part, was watching him from across the table and doing her own quiet accounting. She had a system for reading people. It had been refined over years of boardrooms and negotiations, and one marriage that had confirmed every early suspicion she had ignored. The system was useful. The problem with the system was that it worked best when the person across from her was performing slightly, trying to present a version of themselves, and she could read the gap between the performance and what was underneath. He was not performing. She did not know what to do with someone who was not performing. "Do you have kids?" she asked. It was the kind of question she asked at networking events, the kind that moved a conversation forward without requiring her to offer anything in return. She expected a short answer. "I have one," he said. "Lily. She's 7. He picked up his water glass, set it down. Then, without any logical connection to what she had asked, "She's been asking me all week why spiders eat their own webs and then spin new ones." Nora set her fork down. "I looked it up," he said. "Turns out they do it for the protein. They recycle what they made because it costs too much to let it go. But I didn't tell her that." He looked at the table. I couldn't figure out how to say it in a way that wasn't sad. Nora did not respond immediately. She was not reaching for a response. She was just sitting with what he had said, which was something she had not done with another person's words in longer than she could specifically remember. Her ex-husband had talked constantly. He had filled every space, answered questions she hadn't asked, moved through conversations like he was afraid of what the pauses might contain. She had spent 6 years feeling slightly talked over. Caleb was looking at the table. He did not seem to need her to say anything. She found herself unexpectedly grateful for that. Later in the meal, somewhere between the main course and the moment when both of them had quietly given up the pretense that this was a routine thing they were simply getting through, he told her about the mornings, about how Lily asked, regularly and sincerely, why the sun went down every night and still came back. He had never found an answer that satisfied her. He had tried because that was because of gravity, which was true and meant nothing to a 7-year-old. He had tried because it has to, which was honest and felt like giving up. He had tried because that's how it knows how to come back to us, which Lily had considered for a long moment before saying, "But what if one day it forgets?" He said it like a man who had turned that question over many times since she asked it. Nora said nothing. She thought of her own apartment, her clean, organized apartment, where the silence was the kind she had chosen, and also the kind that collected in the corners without being invited. She thought of her ex-husband, who never would have told that story because it required sitting with uncertainty, with a child's unanswerable question, without immediately resolving it. She thought of how long it had been since she had been in the same room with a person who was not, in some small way, performing. "Do you always talk about her this much?" she asked. The question came out more gently than she expected. He looked up. Something in his expression shifted, not embarrassment exactly, more like a man who has been caught being himself. "Probably," he said. "Is it too much?" "No," she said, and she meant it completely. She had eaten dinner across from a lot of people in the past 2 years. Colleagues, clients, the 3 dates Priya had talked her into before this one, each of which had been fine in the technical sense, presentable men, adequate conversation, nothing that required her to be more than halfway present. She had become skilled at the kind of dinner that required 20% of her attention, where she could nod and ask a follow-up question and track her own thoughts simultaneously. It was efficient. It was also, she was willing to admit in the privacy of her own mind, somewhat depressing. She was using 100% of her attention right now, and she could not have explained why, except that he kept saying things that required it. Toward the end of the evening, she asked him a question she had been turning over since Route 9 that morning. "Do you stop for strangers often?" she said. "Or was this morning unusual?" He thought about it. "I stop when I can," he said. "I was late opening the shop this morning because of it. But I don't regret it." He looked at her. "That's not something I say lightly." She looked down at her water glass. She did not regret it either. She had not stopped regretting things in 2 years, practically speaking, but she did not regret this particular morning. The conversation moved as the evening moved, unhurried, slightly careful in the way of 2 people who had both been wrong before about feeling certain. He mentioned Pete once, briefly, without naming the shop. Just that he had a friend who had run a small business for years and recently had to close it down. He did not know why he mentioned it. He moved past it quickly. Nora was listening. She almost said something. Then the waiter came back, and the thread dissolved. She brought up Ashby Consulting without meaning to. She was explaining how her company operated, the kind of work they did, regional restructuring assessments, market valuations for mid-size acquisitions. She said the company name as part of a sentence, naturally, the way you would say where you work to someone you had been talking to for 2 hours. Caleb went quiet. Not the quiet of someone who had run out of things to say. A different quiet. The kind that happens when a thing connects to another thing, and the connecting takes a moment to process. He did not say anything. He picked up his glass. He finished what was in it. She did not notice the pause. She had moved on to another thought. Something about the way smaller markets had shifted in the past 3 years, and he listened, and he responded, but something in the back of his mind had started working through a different problem. Pete Larson, Morrison Street. The valuation report that had come back lower than the bank's threshold. The refinancing that fell through. 14 years of work, sold inside of 60 days. He did not know yet what he felt. He only knew the name had landed somewhere it was going to stay. They finished dinner at 9:20. He paid before she could. She let him, because arguing about it would have required more energy than the principal was worth, and also because she was watching him with an attention she had not given anyone in a long time, and it was making her slightly less efficient than usual. Outside, the night had dropped to whatever the low 40s felt like in Ohio in October, which was enough cold to make you aware of your own arms. The parking lot of Rosario's was half empty, the lot lights casting yellow circles on the asphalt. Nora had parked 3 spaces from the door. Caleb had parked at the far end, near the street. Neither of them walked toward their cars. They stood under the nearest light. The wind moved through the row of maples along the lot's edge, shaking down a few late leaves. A couple came out of the restaurant behind them and walked the other direction without noticing them, talking about something that made one of them laugh. The sound faded. The lot went quiet again, except for the distant sound of traffic on Market Street. There was a specific quality to this particular silence that Caleb noticed and did not know how to name. It was not the silence of people with nothing to say. It was the silence of two people who had said enough for one evening and were standing in the space just after that, not quite ready to let the space close. "I have a confession," he said. She waited. "Derek told me the person he was setting me up with was successful and smart and worth meeting. He did not tell me her name, what she looked like, or anything about her life. He looked at the sky briefly. I figured that meant she was probably great on paper and nothing would come of it, and I'd be home by 9. Nora made a sound that was not quite a laugh but lived in the same neighborhood. "Priya told me nearly the same thing," she said. "Except she also said I had been alone long enough that I was starting to lose the capacity for small talk, and she was doing it for my own good." Was she right? About the small talk? Partially. She looked at him. "I didn't expect tonight to be difficult to end." He did not say anything to that, but something in his expression accepted it. "You fix cars well," she said. She was already half turning toward the lot. "You're a decent flashlight holder," he said. She laughed, a real one, brief and unguarded. Then she walked toward her car, and he watched her go, and neither of them said anything about the next time, because neither of them was ready to say it out loud yet. He drove home with the windows down despite the cold, the way he did when he needed his mind to slow to a manageable speed. He did not turn on the radio. He thought about the dinner, which had been better than he had any right to expect. He thought about Lily and the sun. He thought about Pete Larson. He parked in front of the house and sat in the truck for a moment. Then he called Derek. Derek answered on the second ring. "How'd it go?" Derek said, in the tone of someone who already thought they knew. "Tell me about Ashby Consulting," Caleb said. A pause. Then Derek said carefully, "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean." Another pause. Derek exhaled. "She wasn't the decision maker, Caleb. She did the report. The bank made the call. You know how it works." "I know how it works. Pete's okay. He got on with Harlan's crew. He's making decent money. He told me last week "I know Pete's okay," Caleb said. "That's not what I'm asking." He stayed on the phone another 5 minutes and then said goodnight and sat in the dark truck in front of his dark house for a while longer. Lily was asleep inside, he knew, in the way a parent always knows. The neighbor's porch light was off, which meant she'd checked in and gone home. He went inside. He sat at the kitchen table, which was the same table he'd had since before Lily was born, the same table where they had eaten every meal after the funeral. And he had helped Lily with homework and had coffee alone too many mornings to count. He opened his phone. Derek had sent to contact Nora Ashby with no message attached, just the number. He started typing. He got to "sorry for not reaching out sooner, tonight was," and stopped. Deleted it. He started again. "I found out tonight about the Larson," and stopped again. Deleted that too. He was not angry at her. That was the problem. He had expected to be angry, or at least to be able to locate the anger cleanly, to have it be a wall between them that he could point to and explain. But he sat at the kitchen table and tried to be angry, and what he found instead was something more complicated, the feeling of a man who understood that the world worked through systems that damaged people without malice, who had lived near enough to those systems to see it happen, and who had also just spent 2 hours with a person who felt like the first unguarded thing to enter his life in 3 years. He thought about Pete, about the afternoon Pete had called him 6 weeks ago, voice flat in the way it gets when a person has already finished grieving a thing and has moved into the part where they simply report the facts. 14 years, he'd said it twice. 14 years and the bank just, and then he had not finished the sentence, because there was no useful way to finish it. Caleb had sat on the other end of the line and said the only thing that seemed true, which was "I know," and Pete had said "yeah," and that had been most of the conversation. He looked at his phone. He looked at the ceiling. He was not a man who sat still often, But tonight he sat still for a long time at the kitchen table, while the house was quiet, and the refrigerator hummed, and outside a car passed on the street, and its headlights swept briefly through the window and disappeared. He did not call. He did not text. He turned off the kitchen light and went to bed. Across town, in the apartment on Clement Street that she had chosen precisely because it was easy to manage and close to everything she needed, Nora sat at her desk with her laptop open and a report she was not reading. She checked her phone twice. Nothing. She closed the laptop at 11, changed, and stood in the bathroom brushing her teeth, looking at herself in the mirror. She had learned, in the 2 years since the divorce, to read the absence of a message the same way she read a balance sheet. Information was information, regardless of what it said. She turned off the light. She told herself this was why she had not wanted to do this. She did not entirely believe herself, which was new. She slept badly. She got up at 6. Lily came downstairs the next morning while the toast was still in the toaster. She was wearing her shoes already, which meant she was in a good mood and prepared. 2 qualities she had apparently been born with and had not inherited from either parent in any obvious way. She sat at the kitchen table across from her father and accepted the orange juice he slid toward her. "Did you go on your dinner thing last night?" she said. "I did," Caleb said. "Was it okay?" "It was okay." Lily considered that. She took a bite of her toast when it appeared, chewed thoughtfully, looked at the window. The morning was cloudy, the same gray-white sky that had hung over the town since the weekend. "Were you nervous?" she said. "A little. Did you meet anybody?" Caleb looked at his coffee. "Yeah," he said. "I did. But I'm not sure what I think yet." Lily absorbed this with the unhurried patience of someone who had learned, very young, that adult emotions took longer than they were supposed to. "Mom used to say," she began, and then paused. The way she always paused when she led with that, as if she were giving him a moment to brace, that the people worth meeting are the ones that make you not sure. Because the ones you're sure about right away usually don't matter. Caleb set his coffee cup down. He did not ask her when her mother had said that, or in what context, or how she still remembered it with such precision at 7 years old. He just sat with it, the way he sat with all the things Lily carried that he hadn't taught her. The toast cooled. The clouds outside shifted slightly, letting through a pale bar of morning light. Lily picked up her backpack from the chair beside her. "I'm ready," she said, as if none of the past 3 minutes had happened. He drove her to school. He watched her go through the double doors without looking back. He sat in the truck. He opened his phone, found the half-typed message he had deleted last night, started a new one, got through 3 words and stopped. Then he closed the texts entirely and pressed the call button. It rang 4 times. "Hello," Nora said. She did not say good morning. She did not pretend she was in the middle of something. The word came out flat and honest and slightly tired, the voice of a person who had not slept well and was not going to pretend otherwise. "I owe you something," Caleb said. A pause. "Ashby Consulting," he said. "Pete Larson, Morrison Street Auto. About 6 weeks ago." The silence that followed was a specific kind, not the silence of someone surprised, the silence of someone who had been waiting, possibly, for something to be said and was now waiting to hear how it would be said. "I know that project," she said. "I figured. I did the market analysis," she said. "The valuation report." She did not rush the explanation. She let it land first. "I didn't know the specific owner. I never know the specific people when I'm doing the numbers part. That's not a defense. I know what the report led to." "I know it's not a defense," he said. Another pause. "Pete found work," he said. "He's with a crew out on the east side now. He told Derek last week he said the hours are better." He looked out the windshield at the school parking lot, mostly empty now. "I'm not calling to blame you for it." "Then why are you calling?" He thought about that. About Lily at the kitchen table. About the way the question had been simple when she asked it, and complicated the moment it belonged to him. "Because last night was the first evening in a long time where I didn't feel like I was managing something," he said. "And I went home and found a reason to not say that. And I sat with it all night. And this morning my 7-year-old, without knowing anything about any of this, told me the people worth meeting are the ones that make you not sure." He heard her exhale. "I can't promise you," she said quietly, "that my work doesn't have real consequences for real people. I can't make that promise and mean it a beat. But I can be honest with you, and last night that was the first time in I don't know how long that I said what I actually thought to someone and didn't edit it first." He was quiet. "Pete's okay," he said again. Not as a concession, just as a fact that was true and needed to be said once more before it could be set down. "I'm glad," she said. "I didn't call last night because I didn't know what I wanted to say." He looked at the dashboard, at the folded piece of paper that was still tucked under the corner of the inspection sticker, even though the dinner it referred to had come and gone. "I know now." She did not ask what it was. "Coffee," she said. "Not a dinner, not a thing, just coffee." A pause. "Tomorrow morning?" "Yeah," he said. "Tomorrow morning." 3 weeks passed in the way of October weeks in small Ohio towns steadily, with the trees losing color in stages and the morning temperature dropping a degree or two every few days, and the particular low-angle light of fall arriving earlier each afternoon. Caleb opened the shop. He fixed cars. He made Lily breakfast and drove her to school, and answered her questions as honestly as he could, and occasionally told her he did not know, which she accepted better than most adults accepted it from each other. He had coffee twice with Nora, once at the place on Franklin, once at the diner on Marsh where the booths were wide enough to sit across from someone and actually see them. He did not bring Lily. It was not time for that. He was careful about what was time for what. Nora went to work and did her work and answered her emails and sat in her office with the view of the parking structure and thought, not constantly but more than she had thought about anything in a while, about the particular quality of listening that she had noticed in him. Not once in 3 meetings had he filled a silence before she was ready to fill it. She had not known how much she had needed that until it was there. On a Saturday morning in late October, the fog was back on Route 9, but lighter. The kind of fog that would burn off by 9, not the kind that stayed. Nora drove out of town and then back, past the intersection at Morrison, and turned right on Ellsworth. And after half a mile she saw the sign Merritt Auto, hand-painted on a wooden board, blue letters on white, not quite level. The lot had 3 cars in it. The bay doors were up. She pulled in. She had not called ahead. She had thought about it and decided against it, which was itself a kind of answer to a question she had not consciously been asking. She parked and got out. The girl appeared from around the side of the building at a speed that suggested she had been somewhere she maybe should not have been and was pretending otherwise. She was 7 years old and had her father's eyes and was wearing a jacket 2 sizes too large that had probably been his at some point. She stopped when she saw Nora, tilted her head. "Is your car broken?" she said. Nora crouched down, which brought her almost level with the girl. "No," she said. "It's working fine." Lily considered this with great seriousness. "Then how come you're at a car shop?" "I just wanted to come by," Nora said. "Is that okay?" Lily thought about it for exactly the length of time it deserved. "Yeah," she said. "We get people like that sometimes. Dad says some people just like the smell of motor oil." "Do they?" "Dad says he does." She seemed to find this entirely reasonable. "I think it smells like my dad's shirt, so I like it too." Nora stood back up. She heard boots on concrete and turned. Caleb was standing in the doorway of the bay, a rag in his hand, something in his expression that was not quite surprise and not quite the absence of surprise, but somewhere in the middle, the look of a man who has spent a month trying not to expect something and has just found out he was wrong to try. He looked at Lily. Lily looked at him with the neutral expression of someone who did not understand why the adults were having a moment. "She just came to see," Lily reported. "Yeah," Caleb said. "I can see that." He wiped his hands on the rag. He did not take his eyes off Nora in the way that men sometimes do when they are cataloging something, deciding what to make of it. He took his eyes off her in the way that people do when they are comfortable enough to look away. Because looking away means you know you can look back. He stepped off the curb and walked across the lot. The morning light fell the way it does in late October, Not quite cold enough to be winter and not warm enough to pretend it wasn't coming. The kind of light that made everything look like it was being seen clearly for the first time or the last time, and the difference between those two things was the whole question. He stopped a few feet away. Lily had already found something else to investigate around the corner of the building. She was like that she arrived, assessed, and moved on. She trusted the world to be mostly all right, which was something she had arrived with, and nothing had yet taken from her. And he intended to keep it that way as long as he possibly could. He looked at the woman standing in his lot on a Saturday morning with no broken car and no appointment. The shop behind him smelled the way it always smelled, oil and metal, and the faint chemical sweetness of brake cleaner, and something underneath all of that was just the smell of work, of days spent doing a specific useful thing. He had built this place from $1,200 and a handshake lease. He had brought Lily here on Saturdays when she was 3, 4, 5, and set her in the chair in the corner of the office with coloring books and crackers, and she had sat there without complaint, watching him, occasionally announcing observations about the cars or the tools or the people who came and went. He had not known, on any of those Saturdays, that he was building something other than a shop. But you do not know what you are building until you see what is still standing later. Some people you meet because something breaks down. Some people you meet because you are both heading toward the same place at the same time, and you simply don't know it yet. Not until the fog lifts and the morning comes in clear, and you look at each other across whatever distance remains, and realize the only thing left to do is close it. He tucked the rag into his back pocket. He walked toward her.